They look at me and see only the mask. The Azakana have spread like a plague since the Noxian invasion. My work never ends. Before, I chased a wayward gale.
What is up, guys? Welcome back. Today I'm going to show you a new Yone build. So a member of my Discord server showed me that Chovy, one of the best if not the best mid laner in the world right now, has been using this build in pro play. So the build is basically Blade of the Ruined King into Sunfire into Bruiser items like the Death Stance, and then you also get with Send. So it's not a full tank build, but it's more like a Bruiser Yone. And I know you guys will be having a lot of questions whether this is good or not, when to use it and such, so that's why I made this video in advance. That will hopefully answer all of your questions. So first of all, is this build any good? I would say it is pretty good, but it's also situational. So the problem Yone has is that they nerf shield bow a bunch of times, right? Like, it has been nerfed several times. So shield bow is not the best item right now, but also Yone doesn't really have any other good mythic item. And then he's also very squishy. So that means that when you play against something like assassins and champions with insane amount of burst damage, you're gonna have a very hard time. So the purpose of this Sunfire build, I've been telling you guys that Yone is not as reliant on crit chance compared to something like a Yasuo. So the purpose of this build is to make him tanky and thus harder to shut down. And this is something I would recommend that you try out against assassins, you know, really bad matchups like the Zed, the Kiana, and so on, because it allows you to be extremely tanky while also having a lot of damage. Thing is, when you normally play against these matchups, you don't really have a choice. You go shield bow into Infinity Edge. It's going to leave you very squishy, and then shield bow is also pretty easy to counter, right? Because if AD assassins go for Serpent's Fang, then that shield is cut in half. It's not going to help you out a lot. But how do you counter a Sunfire? They would have to spend a lot of gold on armor pen before that even does anything against a Sunfire. So it's going to make you extremely tanky. And another reason this is being built right now is that Sunfire or tank items got buffed. I think it was in patch 12.11 where they actually buffed the tank items because they were pretty weak. It's actually after that Yone started building it, and I have been testing it out a bunch before making this video. I was not the creator of this video, I think that was Chovy. He was definitely the first guy to play it in LCK. But I have been testing it out and it has worked out pretty well so far. But is it better than his standard build with a shield bow and Infinity Edge? It totally depends who you're playing against. The standard build has the most damage obviously because it's a glass cannon build where you max out the crit as fast as possible. That is something I recommend that you still use normally, like in easy to medium difficulty matchups, you will still be going for the normal build. But when you play against something extremely difficult in the mid lane, you know, the AD assassins, AD carries and such, if you go for this build, guys, it's going to be so much easier because you're going to be so tanky. Not only the items, but also the runes we are using. We have Lethal Tempo for the early to mid game spike, but we also have Resolve secondary with conditioning and overgrowth, and that is going to stack up really nicely because we will be getting a lot of armor and magic resistance. So this build, Yone becomes a hybrid with like tons of damage, but he also becomes extremely tanky. And this is actually something that Yasuo also went in the past. It was a couple years ago, I believe, but not the same build, but he went stuff like 24s into Frozen Mallet. He was able to go tank items because back then he was also not as reliant on crit chance, but Riot changed that because it ended up being too OP. So they could change that on Yone as well. The way they changed that on Yasuo, if I remembered right, is that they made it so his auto attacks, like the ultimate passive, you only get that armor pen with your crits. And they basically removed the tank build. But Yone is another champion that is not reliant on crit chance. You can build it, which is going to make you or your damage absolutely insane, but you can still keep a lot of your damage by going a Bruiser build like this one right here. So for when you can use it against very difficult matchups, I still recommend that you use the normal build into easier matchups, you know, like mages and such. But if you play against assassins, especially because Yone is like one of the easiest matchups for assassins like the Z, then definitely try this out because it feels so OP. You are so hard to shut down. You'll be so tanky that you can also frontline for your team a lot longer than you would be able to do with the normal build. So the start is still the same, you go Berserkers, and then I've been telling you guys over and over that Blade of the Ruined King is so strong on Yone. Even before this tank Bruiser build appeared, because he's not as reliant on crit chance. And the point of building Blade of the Ruined King early on is because it gives you one of the strongest 1 item power spikes in the game. And you know that Yone has like one of the weakest early games, so you can actually kind of bypass that with a lethal tempo and the Blade of the Ruined King. So we will not be able to chase this Forik any further, but we kicked him out. But just wait and see when we get the items. You're gonna see the damage being crazy still, while also being a Bruiser, meaning very hard to take down for anyone. I am one of the few high elo Yone players who uses that ultimate just like this, without using into the E or into the Q, because it's like a very great or nice way of catching the opponent off guard, because if you E first, then people know you're going to engage. So they will start moving backwards. But if you just ult immediately, people don't expect it. They are so used to Yone players using E into ult or E, Q knockup into ult, that they never expected using the ultimate to engage with. So that's something I can highly recommend. But the build, the new technology by Chovy is such a good build into those very difficult matchups. And for this build to be at its best, you want to make sure that you're using the Resolve lower tier runes I have showed you at the start of the video. You can also go for bone plating, but if you want the maximum effect of this build, guys, you have to make sure that you're getting conditioning and overgrowth. Overgrowth gives you way more value than what you get from a ruby crystal, meaning that you get a lot of HP, and then you get a lot of armor and magic resistance from the conditioning. That will keep stacking up as you get more armor and magic resistance. And that is something we will be getting with this build. So just wait and see when we get the Sunfire. So basically, if you're still not sure why we're using this build, it is because Yone's main build path, like the shield bow, has been nerfed. So it's not really a good item anymore, but because Yone doesn't really have any other choice, that's why everybody has been running this mythic item. So while shield bow has been nerfed, tank items has been buffed, like the Sunfire and the Gauntlet. On top of that, Yone is also known to be very squishy champion, so by getting Blade of the Ruined King into tank item, into bruise item, is going to make you extremely tanky while also having a lot of damage. And it makes it so much easier to play against, especially the AD assassins and AD carries in the mid lane. And when Yone first starts getting a couple kills, you know how it goes. He's just gonna run you down straight up. But Blade of the Ruined King, some people still think it's not a good item. I really don't understand why, because if you look at the stats, the amount of damage you get from this item, guys, is ridiculous. Just look at the damage output when you hover the cursor over this item, like after you have been in a couple fights. Then just hover the cursor over this item because it's gonna show you the damage it has dealt. Plus it also gives you a lot of attack speed, which has great synergy with your Q and your W. So you have Berserkers, then Blade of the Ruined King, and you'll have a lot of attack speed. And then you have that passive to kite and chase people, you also get sustain. So you kinda get everything in one item. That's why you see champions like the Jax and Aurelia go for this item whenever they can. Because it's going to like make their first item power spike as strong as possible. I have shown you guys the Blade of the Ruined King build in previous videos as well, but back then almost nobody used to build it. But right now a lot of people are going for it, even the pro players are going for it right now, so that just goes to show how strong Blade of the Ruined King is on Yone right now. So we will get the Barmy Center. They lowered the total cost of this build, or this item as well, so that actually allowed us to buy it. I think they lowered it by 100 gold or something. We're getting some really nice HP right here, and then of course we also have that passive, which is another bonus. But just imagine playing against an AD assassin. How are they going to deal with this? Because Yone was not able to get any tank items previously. He had to go shield bow into Infinity Edge or shield bow into Death Stance. Even though Death Stance gives you some nice, anti-burst mechanic on the passive, it does not give you any HP. So it's not going to allow you to tank for very much. But with this build, you get armor, magic resistance, HP, and then you get that distance on top of that. So that actually makes you super tanky. So you can actually be a frontline for your team. You can also play him like a normal assassin, you flank the backline. But with this build, you will be allowed to stay in the fight longer before you have to get out. And even if people focus you down, you'll still end up surviving most of the time. And this Sunfire, since they buffed it, guys, it has been absolutely amazing on Yone. I have tested this a couple games now and it feels amazing, honestly. Highly recommend you guys to try it out. But it's not way better than the shield bow Infinity Edge path, because that still gives you the highest damage. But this is something that you can use to bypass the bad matchups. Because Yone is going to outscale them anyways, right? So with this build, you can actually survive and actually fight them in the early game. So if you end up playing against AD assassins, maybe even AD carries in the mid lane, something you really struggle surviving against, you definitely try this out. And the 1 item power spike you get from the Blade of the Ruined King is ridiculous. Lots of damage, lots of attack speed, kiting potential, and then of course also that lifesteal. Also another thing here is that when you play against tanks, like real tanks with high base damage, like something like a Shen, in the early game he can actually deal with you, right? But with this build you're going to be really tanky and you're also going to have so much damage that you can just destroy almost anyone. Got the top side tower, we can go ahead and recall. Because now we will have the Sunfire, the new item on Yone. And now we have that one tank item that we needed. Now you go into the distance. You go into Death Stance, then you go into Witsend. You can also get the Witsend before the Death Stance, but there's really no reason to, because Death Stance works against physical and magic damage. This Lux is not having a very good time. That's a bit sad. But hopefully you guys can see the impact of this build. Just watch when I'm fighting against multiple people, see how long I'm able to tank them while still out DPSing them. Like, there is a reason that Chovy has been using this in a pro game. He played it in the LCK. So when that member in the Discord showed me the build, I immediately looked it up and I've seen that multiple people tried to make it work. But they used it in very easy matchups as well, and that's something I don't really understand. Or I understand it, but I don't see the point. Because it's not necessary. You want to use this into hard matchups. Now Lux is not really a hard matchup, but the purpose of this video is to show you the build. And also talk about why you build it and when you build it. So it doesn't really count, but you want to use it into bad matchups. Because that is where it's at its best. You can also use it into easier matchups, but if you can scale up for free, then why not just go full damage? This is something that allows you to stay alive in lane and also fight back against the worst possible matchups. Now, Yone not being reliable on crit can be a problem. So maybe Riot will try to do something to make him reliable on crit. Similar to what they did with Yasuo back in the days. That is definitely an option. But onto that, have fun playing with this build because it's really fun watching so many people trying to burst you down and then you just survive, damage back and kill them. Easy outplay, and thanks to that Sunfire, see how long I survived. Tanking all of that damage, going back in, getting the kill on the Vel'Koz and then piecing out. Now I am of course also fed this game, but that does not change how much defensive stats you get from this build. So you can try it out for yourself and let me know how it goes. But try out a couple games. Even if you feel like the first game, make sure that you give it a try like properly. You know, like 5 to 10 games. See the damage difference, which is obviously going to be lower. But then also keep in mind how tanky you are. Because that is the important part. The combination of having a lot of damage while also being incredibly tanky. We all know that Bruiser items has been OP for a very long time. That's why this is a way for Yone to like opt into that build path. Because when you do not get shield bow, you can get items like the Morph. One of the most OP defensive items in the game. So now we will go ahead and get the Witch Sand when we have enough gold. We got the Death Stance. When you combine that with a Sunfire, good luck to any assassin out there, because they will not be able to fight us. We are going to be so incredibly tanky, while also being able to dish out a ton of damage. Like, you will still destroy mages, you will still destroy the assassins and the AD carries. And then another bonus is that you will also be able to frontline. Because the old Yone, or the normal Yone that a lot of people are using right now, he's a glass cannon. Like, you still get stuff like the Death Stance and the Guardian Angel on him, but you build him like a glass cannon. So maybe you got stuff like Shield Bow, Infinity Edge, Mortal Reminder, which gives you a ton of damage, but it also leaves you very squishy. So if people focus you down in a fight, like you get CC'd once, they're gonna chain CC you and then you get one shot. But with this build, you can just go perma ham. Like, you just go in, you see somebody, you can just run in. You don't have to worry about somebody being able to push you down anymore. Whoops, I did not expect that E of the Lux to hit. That was a bit unfortunate. I feel like some of the skins on this champion makes it really difficult to see like which ability she's using. Like, is she using the Q, is she using the W or the E? And that's especially a problem I have with Lux. Oh, and Ari too. So I don't know how that's not solved yet, because it really makes it difficult compared to her standard skin, because that's always obvious. You can always see which ability is being used. But I also misplayed that. Actually, if I played it right, I could probably have taken all of them down. But you still see how long I was able to tank all of their stuff before I died. Then imagine if there was a team fight where I had my team with me. We would ace them straight up. Now, Wit's End is something you want to get if they have AP. Magic damage dealers on their team, even if it's only one, because it also buffs the magic damage dealing part of your kit as well, because Yone deals magic damage, mostly physical, but he still has magic damage. But if they do not have that and they have a lot of healing, then you can just go into Mortal Reminder. But this was the video, guys. I hope this was helpful and answered all your questions. Thanks for watching, and see you all next time.